So what's actually going on with this whole UFO thing? Because it seems obvious there's something going on, right? But sometimes it's hard to decipher because either, here's the two choices, guys. Either all this is happening, these whistleblowers are telling literal truths about like what has taken place and what the government is in possession of and what certain people know, and like this whole other crazy technology and these beings and like all this stuff that's just so hard to get our head around. Either these whistleblowers and everything is true, or the government, it wants us to think that's true to some unknown end. It seems like it's the biggest story either way, because it's one of the two in a generalized sense. A lot of these, more recent whistleblowers and figures and communicators that pop up seem ridiculous sometimes, and it's very hard to try to decipher the signal from this space, from all the noise emerging, and perhaps that's a lot of the point with why there is so much noise. But overall, there's a way I've come to think about this that has helped me and might be a better way to categorize the whole issue. Because a lot of people within the space, and I get why, you like to think of it as like, this is some big, extraordinary story, and this will shatter our human understanding, once we get this final perfect disclosure with all this evidence that everyone's going to believe. And that's a whole entire other side of it where I don't really think, I don't know, we'll get into that too. I don't think this disclosure everyone talks about, I don't think it would be quite the shock that some people would think it would be to religion and society and our minds, we just won't be able to handle the shock of this new truth and whatever. I don't think that'll quite be the case. But it seems like it's being, for the most part, a lot less stigmatized or demonized now, for someone to be interested in this topic, to research the topic, which I don't even know what that means. Do your own research, right? Obviously, there's some people doing actual journalism and things on cases and surrounding topics, and that's great. And there's a lot of people just saying things, it seems like. So that's kind of the whole sorting out what's what game, right? And the problem or interesting thing about the whole space is it's one of the deepest human curiosities, right? We all are here in this game. We have awareness, and we're all these aware beings on this planet somehow. And we ignore that day to day, of course, because you would go insane if you just kept worrying about that unknowable fact of where you came from and all that. But that's just why, this whole space, this topic seems to be one of our deepest curiosities. It plays on, how are we alone and what else is out there that is aware of us and might be influencing us or watching us. And so it's fascinating on that level. And that's why, here's what I was getting at on this point. That's why it is very easy to get eyeballs making media and content about this topic. And so that's a whole new factor in trying to decipher what's what. It's very profitable to just pump out noise and speculation for the sake of it on this topic. spin up a niche YouTube channel that's just alien and UFO focused. And then, well, you kind of run out of, I mean, there are tons of like very compelling cases and all that. So I don't know if you would, there'd be a lot to like actually cover before you run out. But just in a sense, like, well, you need to keep saying things and interviewing people to keep a channel going as a business and all that. And so you just start venturing into less compelling things, but you want to present it as compelling. And whatever, I don't know. There's cool channels out there doing all kinds of stuff. That's not what I'm getting at necessarily. But just overall, that's obviously a big factor in this now, where there's incentive to just record an interview with someone, you know, no matter how compelling or legitimate their background or claims seem to be. And this is called all kind of like Wild West, you know. So like it's such a out there topic in relation to like what in the past we've been able to test and prove and like discuss within a realm of narrow, what do the physical sciences say about all this and what's possible. And like this is, I think, again, I'm not like anti everything UFO. There's tons of compelling historical cases and accounts and witness accounts and radar evidence and all this. But at what point is it like briefly lost my train of thought. We're new to this, folks. But what I was getting at is, it's just, there's less incentive, you know, for someone publishing media on this, like me right now, just talking. You know, someone recording an interview with a subject who claims to have an experience or something to say. There's no incentive really on your part as the content creator or journalist or whatever to care about the verification or relay your actual thoughts on how compelling or truthful or convincing some things are. And I guess whatever, you're not like supposed to put your opinion in journalism, but I'm just saying like there's no reason for there to be a filter on that front. Because if someone has something crazy and interesting to say, that's going to get viewership and eyeballs. So that's one whole side of it. Folks, aren't you just excited to see what Jeremy Corbell says next? Folks, can't you just not wait? Aren't you just on the edge of your seat to see the next Ross Coulthart interview? Folks, aren't you just pulling out your hair and potentially teeth? Just waiting for what Lou Elizondo, what fucking Lou Elizondo is gonna say next? I know I am. I pulled out a lot of hair. I haven't quite gotten to the pulling out my teeth, but I'm about ready to. So on the government side of things, as far as pumping copious amounts of information into the space and attempting to control certain narratives and disclosures, to some degree on that front, it seems obvious. I think this isn't a groundbreaking opinion, but they seem to be interested in pumping noise, just muddying the waters, you know, to some degree, and perhaps to a large degree. Just for the sake of delaying, like convincing disclosure, you know, or trying to hide something, perhaps, and confuse other governments or nations that might be working on engineering similar things. I don't know. That's all. My main point that we'll get to kind of like removes, it's just kind of where I arrived on all this. And in a way is like just checking out of it, because a lot of it is just too much to keep track of. If you take a look at Oh, good. I didn't spill. Felt like I did. If you take a look at folks, Reddit. Reddit's a wonderful place, right? Fantastical website full of wondrous stories and facts, sometimes perhaps. If you take a look at say the r/UFOs subreddit, which I try not to do all too much anymore. But what I've noticed on places like that, if you had a genuine interest in the subject before, if you spend too much time on a feed like that, and really as a result, just that's kind of a feed of the latest so-called developments and everything in the space. So just in a general sense, if you're paying attention to a feed tracking the current news and documentaries and whistleblowers and everything in the space, you are going to be turned off to the subject, even if you had a genuine interest coming in based on some of these historical cases and things, because it's just a lot of noise and everything gets clouded, and you see all this bullshit that's obviously not anything, and you see people talking about it in a serious way, or someone posts a video and it's obviously geese flying at night in a V formation in a city, but the city lights light it up and whatever. I'm not trying to dismiss all video and all photos. I think there is some crazy compelling stuff out there, and maybe that's for a different video, actually going over what I've found compelling. I don't know. But I'm just saying, just for example, you see something that's not compelling or convincing to you, and you see a lot of other people talking about it as if it is. And if you're just paying attention to all this current noise and news feed of stuff and just random videos, you'll get turned off to it, because a lot of times there is an explanation for all these things that just pop up. And you're okay. You naturally think, well, then I guess everything's probably explainable, and it's just a bunch of wackos talking about things. And that's probably what certain forces want you to think. And I don't know. I think, back to the government thing, I think it's impossible to be a massive coordinated conspiracy. You can't do a conspiracy for that long. And also, why would you? It's been all over the place on their side of things. And it seems obvious they've only been interested in just generating confusion and painting people who are interested in these things as crazies. It seems like they've had a vested interest in doing that over the years. And you will go crazy trying to keep up with the current news and whatever. Because there's just so much, I don't know. Again, it's become so profitable from a media standpoint to produce content and discussions on this that it just turns into so much, I don't know. I'm just describing the entire downsides or current downsides of the internet, just the profitability of pumping noise into the void, just pumping out sheer noise and seeing what sticks. And if you pump out noise on a niche, compelling topic like this, a lot is going to stick. So, what I've arrived at on this is, again, you just get turned off trying to keep up with things. But what I think it is, it's not going back to the whole groundbreaking disclosure thing, this will shatter religions and worldviews and shatter people's minds. It so obviously won't. And I don't even know what evidence would be compelling to people at this point with AI video and all that, but whatever, saying we had like no doubt compelling evidence, or people are like seeing, standing across from alien entities themselves, or whatever. Say we had compelling, believable disclosure. The other thing is it's all political. So like whatever administration discloses something, it'll be like, oh, either political, like, yeah, that they just have some angle on this. They're just trying to distract from something, some policy they're doing, or just this general distrust of like Congress and the federal government and all that. Like, literally what could the federal government present as disclosure that people would be like, oh, wow, okay, thank you for telling us? Like, what could that possibly be at this point with AI video? And like, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is something, but really just like standing across, like seeing something with your own eyes. And that's what's compelling about a lot of these historical cases and accounts. Like, not, obviously some people make up or embellish certain things to like generate more clout and try to get attention. But I think that's very few overall. And there's just so much out there that, like, for the most part, if I see someone like genuinely discussing something and like what they experienced and like what they saw, like that becomes compelling with enough, not just one person one time in history said something, but thousands and hundreds of thousands of these reports. So that's what's convincing about a lot of the historical like mass sightings and individual sightings and whatever. But we're not getting into that necessarily. Yeah, so number one, like, I don't even know what they could present as like believable or that we would accept as disclosure or whatever, But number two, we are great. Our species is great, and we have to be for survival and just going on living. We are great at quickly, very quickly, accepting in whatever happens in this experience. And it all is just experience, and that's what we're getting to later. This UFO thing, whatever it possibly is, as insane as it could possibly be, and honestly seems to be, like just insane compared to our current normalized worldview of things, of like just us here, on this here, like just playing this social game with our heads down, and like this is like crazy and wondrous and like outside of that. But as crazy as this arena is, it's still just a thing within our awareness and within this game and within this experience. It's not shattering. The crazy thing is that we are aware, and that there is this awareness of which we seem to be a part of which we are a part of. Like, that's the only fundamental fact we know. And we're living this life, and we're having this, and the universe exists, and like we exist, and awareness exists. And like anything, being here at all, that is the crazy thing. That's the wild thing. If we're going to talk about like mind-shattering wonder and being incapable of taking in a new fact about experience, like that's already done. Like, that's the thing, and we've already normalized it. That's the crazy thing, that anything is like that we're here, and that anything is here. And that's amazing and cool. And of course we normalize it. We have to. Like, you would just go insane if like you were able to take in like the sheer wonder of what this is at all moments. And that's a separate theory, folks. It's for a different video. I think it takes so much. You have to ignore so much to not be insane, I think. the insane people are actually the normal ones, because they just gave up on normalizing. They're just, maybe they're the lazy ones. They didn't want to do all the work at like every minute normalizing everything that we just ignore, you know, but we'll leave that for another day. But that's the point. This UFO thing, we would just say, okay, cool. But we all have lives to lead. And here's also what it is, folks. It's the whole thing of, if we're going to be so shocked and revere these aliens and these UFOs, that's like admitting, that's putting ourselves in the back seat. Like, wow, this other thing deserves my attention and respect and admiration. This other being, or whatever the hell it is, us from the future, who knows? It's crazy. Again, I'm not against any of this stuff. It's fascinating. It just becomes exhausting to keep up with, but whatever. If we're like placing all this reverence in this thing, that like takes away from our own power and our own options in our own life and like our own experience, because it all just is experience. These fucking aliens, whatever they are, aren't some advanced whatever, having some better, more powerful existence or experience. They would just be having their own experience. And whatever world and games their civilization, or maybe they're beyond civilization, I don't even know. Whatever experience they're having, we're all just within experience. And it's all fun and equal. And it's like, that's a whole nother side of it. And I didn't even really realize I would get into that until starting to record here. But that's a whole nother side of this. That like, you're taking away your own power if you're going to give your attention to this other thing and like these other beings that are so powerful and cool and from far away, or perhaps from closer than we imagine. Folks, the ocean floor, the great unexplored, we don't know what's down there. Could be alien bases or UFO generating machines, or that could all be a psyop. Folks, psyops are everywhere, I'd imagine. Folks, you can never be sure this isn't a psyop. It is in some regard. Discussions are, I don't know, we won't go there. It's not, I'm not an operative. I'm my own operative, perhaps. Anyways, we don't need to dwell on that. That's just a crazy part of it. You're decreasing your own power and possibility of your own experience and life you are currently inhabiting by just throwing your attention to this other thing you imagine is like powerful and important and whatever. And that's across the board. That's not just the alien thing. That's like throwing your attention at anything like that and like revering anything as some shattering story or whatever. And I get it, and it's fascinating, and I've been there, and I'm still there sometimes. We're all born, which we can't explain. We all die, which we all fear for some reason. You know, and like, so in the middle of the game, yeah, we like start to normalize things, and like this huge topic would be some shattering thing that like exists outside of our normal game. Sure. But it's just another thing within this universe we experience. You know, nothing, my theory is nothing could possibly be that shattering, because we have to accept these new things. Like, okay, aliens would just become a thing we accept, like we have with so much else in the past. I mean, just say on the technology front, how crazy like an iPhone and like instant access to everything would be. Even 50 years ago, they couldn't imagine this. And that's so recent, say 100 years ago. So that's a new thing, and all these things are so wild and new. But yet, it always as a necessity, must feel normal. You know, we quickly normalize it all. So disclosure would not be some mind-shattering global event. It would just be added to the list of things that we accept within our experience. And that's really what it's come down to for me. And I don't know. I haven't kept up recently with news and updates and whistleblowers. It's just exhausting, you know. There can be weeks or like a month where you kind of get generally down that content path, and it's interesting, and you try to take in, you know, what might actually be going on currently and stuff. But it's just exhausting to keep up with beyond that. So I'll be interested once there's catastrophic disclosure. I'll take a look at that. That'll be interesting to check out. And it is cool to maybe dive into some of these most compelling cases and accounts throughout history. That's, you know, that's interesting and maybe can shed light on things. But again, like I'm just to the point where like it's not some ultimate thing that a lot of the people within the space make it out to be. It's not some shattering thing. It's just another thing, and everything is a thing. This is just a different thing. Everything is a thing within our awareness, and the awareness itself is the wild thing. And it's not even that wild, because the only reason us being here and aware would be wild is like if you assume that nothing. So we think that's wild, like, wow, how does anything exist at all? Which is wild. And I'm not saying I'm outside. I'm not saying I've transcended these types of questions and like feelings, but I don't know how to say that. It's like the reason it shouldn't be wild is because it's, if you like, would that be logic? I don't know what the thing would be. Reasoning on the whole concept of nothing. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm stammering over, trying to arrive at. The whole argument on, you know, there could never have been nothing. Because there is something, and you can't have something from a true nothing, which means no possibility of anything or whatever. So there's something, obviously, because we're here and we can see it and we're experiencing it. So that means there could never have been nothing, which means there's always been something. And we're part of it, which is cool. And it also means like there's no time. And this is a whole, we're not going to dwell on this. We can touch on it here since we're on a roll here. We're on a roll figuring out what the deal with UFOs is. And I just jumped off the roll because I felt the need to add in meta commentary to my discussion here. But the whole concept of nothing, and like there couldn't have been nothing because there's something and we're part of it. And it's also the whole thing of time, you know. We normalize time into like this real thing that we use to like, I don't know about use, we experience as we go through this current experience. But like we have no clue what time is. And like obviously to some degree it's a complete fabrication because like the crazy thing to me is, and this is what we're not going to dwell on because it's a whole other can of worms. Folks, we're just opening cans of worms. Maybe that's what I should call the channel. A can of worms. I don't know. That's a little pretentious. But it's the whole thing of what else we've normalized. We've all just like normalized this whole recent materialism and Big Bang hypothesis and like taking science, like pretending science has become capable of answering the ultimate questions. Like, science is great, but all science is like a map, It's just mapping our experience, and we have very detailed maps. We're very good at mapping the world we perceive, and that's great because then we can build and engineer things and predict things and advance, which is always good, right, folks? Progress and advancement is always good, as we all know. But whatever. Science is cool, but it's not cool when they, folks, it's pretty lame. Folks, science gets pretty fucking lame when they attempt to use science, which is a mapping tool within experience, to try to make claims on how the matter and objects we are perceiving is what is creating our perception. And we won't dwell on that because that seems crazy to me. It seems normal to most other smart people, smart scientists in the world. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm not saying I don't know, you get it. Most intellectuals and credentialed experts, that seems completely fine. That seems completely normal to say, yes, science, the tool which creates a map of our awareness, eventually that map is going to be detailed enough to explain how the territory itself got there to map in the first place. And again, we're not going to dwell on that. We'll find some tighter arguments and create a better presentation on that front. But it's just that whole general feeling of, I was getting at the Big Bang, this modern educated view would accept the Big Bang as some origin story because the brain is nothing but particles that exploded from this Big Bang a long time ago. And then the crazy thing to me is, how is that not more kooky than the alternative that's often painted as the kooky side? I would be in direct opposition to that because my current view is that it seems awareness is the fundamental thing. And obviously I can't begin to explain that. Folks, I'm not going to be able to begin to explain God and the source of all that is and will ever be, and it would be futile to attempt to explain that. But my current feeling is that's the case. Awareness is fundamental, and objects and experiences and things appear within awareness, which is that's the only fundamental fact we know. We are aware. So that's why I feel comfortable starting there, and why sometimes it seems quite kooky to take a complete 180 from that and introduce this thing as an explanation of our awareness called the Big Bang. That number one is in again, it's a complete reversal of taking the only fundamental fact we know, spinning it on its head and saying, no, I'm going to attempt to explain how the things I'm perceiving within my awareness, how those actually created my awareness. And my awareness is just a fluke mistake that magically evolved. And as a result, we're able to be conscious and perceive this vast physical universe. And it wouldn't have had to have happened. It's just like this fluke. Consciousness is just some fluke we're hallucinating, some fluke process we're hallucinating as a survival mechanism, because all we are is finite physical beings in a physical universe that all exploded from nothing a long time ago. And how does that not introduce just so many more questions than just holding a simple trust in the fact that awareness is what seems to be fundamental? Whatever, we'll get there on that front. But I wanted to explain that part of it because that's why this whole UFO thing, it's just becoming less and less shocking or convincing or worth paying attention to personally, currently, because there's nothing you can do about it, and it seems futile to try to keep up with it all. And yeah, it's just another thing, and there's a trillion things, and aliens and UFOs. It's just another thing. And we would quickly normalize it. And even if it leads to some apocalypse or disaster, the worst imaginable thing, that is still just another thing. That's still just another interesting unfolding and thing to experience within this current experience. And so, I'm just trying to chill out. I'm not going to tell other people what to do, but just chill out and be childlike. You must be like a child. The lilies of the field do not toil or spin. And take no thought for your life, or what you will eat, or where you will sleep. I've just heard advice like that over the years, and so that seems to be something good to return to time, to just exist and experience. And smile when you see someone talking about the UFO they saw, because that's cool, and that's like a cool experience to have. And that would be an amazingly different experience for anyone to have. And so it's all good and it's all cool. And folks, I think we figured out what the deal with UFOs was here today. I know I did.